You're live. Wow. That's awesome. I'm glad I'm live. Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Monday night class on Moshiach and Geula and redemption. And we are now going to be learning about, you guessed it, Moshiach and Geula. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Let's see what we got here. Parshas Balak. Pretty short sikha, originally given on Yud Zayin Tammuz. Interesting. Exactly 30 years ago. So let's see what the Rebbe has to say about Moshiach and Geula connected to this week. Starting with Aleph. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. עניינו מיוחד של יום השבת, שחל בו 17 בתמוז, יום ל-4 beis ufanim. So the Shabbat that the Sikha was given was on Yud Zayin Tammuz. Yud Zayin Tammuz is a fast day, and it's the beginning of the 3 weeks, which are called the week, the time of narrowness, or otherwise known as a challenging time for Am Yisrael. It began the beginning of what became many calamities, which culminate on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, during these 3-week periods. And interesting enough, last year, Yud Zayin Tammuz fell out on Shabbat, and on Shabbat we do not fast. Only Yom Kippur is the only day that pushes off Shabbat. But other than that, Shabbat pushes off the fast day. So that year there was not a fast, and it got pushed off to Yom Rishon, which it is this year as well, the first day of the week. So the Rebbe said there's 2 connections to this, 2 things. One, b'pashtus, in a simple sense. That on Shabbat we know it's forbidden to fast. How much more so when it's connected to a fast that is connected to undesirable things. Shari Shabbat ain't etzevol, because you're not allowed to have any sadness on Shabbat. And even more than that, Shabbat is a day of simcha, a day of joy. V'tainug, in pleasure. And therefore, the fast day on Shabbat got pushed off to the day after Shabbat, which would have been Yom Rishon, or known in the vernacular of the English calendar as Sunday. Base. But Oyemek Yoser, in a deeper way. Ulai Yesh Lamar, perhaps there is to say, T'chias hanias mipenei Yom HaShabbat hi Tiras HaKoach l'dichisai b'bitulo mekol k'fi shemetziinu Tisha B'Av shachal liyos b'Shabbat v'dechayonu la'achar Shabbat Amar Rabbi Hoel nidcha yidacha, skipping the bracket, v'ad yidacha sheb'yotz HaMashiach. So it says like this, the Rebbe said, since it's already being pushed off, the fast day, then it should be pushed off, not just for that day of Shabbat, but should be pushed off forever. We should automatically enter into Yom HaMashiach, in the days of Mashiach, when all fast days will be nullified and transformed to days of joy. As the Rambam says, all fast days will be nullified in the days of Mashiach. Not only will the fast days be nullified, but they will be transformed to days of great joy. And as it says, that Hashem basically declares that these days will be turned over and transformed to days of joy. And furthermore, when a fast day comes on Shabbat, not only is the fast day pushed off by Shabbat, but it has to be transformed. In other words, Shabbat has to bring forth even more joy and more pleasure and more happiness than it would have normally, because of the fact that the fast day will be transformed to a day of joy and simcha. And therefore, in Shabbat, we have to already be holding it in such a place. B'sigal Nachar Katzatz explained a little bit of a different way. Hayachas l'yom hataniyas l'yom haShabbat hu b'beis l'fanim. And the relationship between the fast day and the Shabbat day is in two ways. Aleph, that the all negative things and undesirable things of a fast day are not relevant to Shabbat, and therefore it has to be pushed off. And base, Hadgashas ha'inyan ha'yechovi d'yom ha'taniyah she'yishno gam k'shachal b'Shabbat. And secondarily, that not only do they have to be pushed off, but it has to be transformed, just like it will be in Mashiach, into great joy and simcha. Okay, base. Biur ha'inyan, to explain this a little more. Yom hataniyas v'chetzonias hu inin b'liti retzuim inina enoishu haifech haratzon v'ha'anuk. Avo penimias hu inin hatov. That the outermost, the external part of the day of Shabbat, we know that on everything in this world has a panimi and a chetzoni, an inner part and an outer part. And the innermost part of a fast day is good. It's the outer part that we suffer. We can't eat, we can't drink, we have to say extended prayers of tachnun, of atonement. It seems like it's not, a day that is not good. But the inner dimension of the fast day is, it's called Hayom Ratzon Hashem, a day of desire for Hashem. Because the inner part is a very, very deep goodness that the purpose is to encourage us to reconnect to the deep goodness and the deep part of our soul that is connected to God. And we know that this is the fourth fast day, called the Tzom HaRevi'i. And it is the first of the 4 days of fast days that are brought down in Kabbalah. And the outermost dimension of this that is undesirable is connected to the beginning of the connection to the destruction and exile connected to the Beis Hamikdash. But the innermost dimension is good. And this is hinted also in the way that the fourth fast day is situated on the 17th day of the month. And we know that 17 is the gematria for Tov. The numerical equivalent of the Hebrew word for Tov, which is good, which is Tes Vav Beitz, is 17. And furthermore, the complete good that will be brought forth in the true and complete redemption. That the intention and the general intention of the exile and the negative things that transpire in the exile and the gullets is there only to be elevated to bring forth the goodness that will take place in the true and complete redemption. Namely, that the outermost aspect of the fast and the exile is negative, but the innermost aspect of the exile and the fast is positive. It's redemption. Often the thing that appeared to be the most challenging and difficult for us in a revealed way unlocked the deepest powers and abilities for us for goodness in a deeper way. But But Perush Hakasuv, Tzoim Revi'is, Yehila Beis Yehuda, Lasasam Lesimcha, Karila, Hotzoim, Karila, Oh, Sasam Lesimcha, Bisman, Shi Yeshra Loim, Yehila Sasam Lesimcha, Ein Shalom Zot, the Chorein Muvon. Yikra Yo Echad, Bishamot, Hafichim Nagamri, Tzoim, Lasasam Lesimcha, Ela Kivan, Shakavan, Tzvataklis, Tzoim, Hafichasoi, Lasasam Lesimcha. Shuvah the Acher Yoyne Harchaman Hagos. Eder Shaban Hagos would gash be Ikara in Hatzain. But Gu'ul is Hagal in Amitas Hasamisim. So in the times of the exile, what seems to be emphasized the most is the external, what is known as the Chitzomi, outer part of the fast. And in the times of redemption in Geula, we will see the innermost aspect of the fast day is in fact a very high, lofty, holy thing and a good thing. Gimel. And now we're going to take this a little bit further to explain what happens, of course, when the fast day falls out on Shabbat. Since the day of Shabbat itself is what we call a day of Ratzain, it's a very holy day. And Shabbat in itself is connected to redemption. And that's we see a little bit of that on the song that we sing on the day of Shabbat. But it says, God, please bring us to the day of eternal Shabbat. We will have eternal rest and peace, which is connected, of course, to the redemption. And therefore, since Shabbat is a foretaste of the redemption and a day of rest and pleasure and goodness, therefore the fast cannot exist on such a day because a fast is connected to things that are revealed in a way of destruction and negativity, and Shabbat is connected to things that are only good and revealed good and positive and joy. The Indians are mugash v'hachila v'shtia b'yom ha'tiniyas shachal b'Shabbat. Shemitzvah v'oinig v'oinig achila v'shtia dagam ha'gedolim basar v'yayin tashvil shemen v'yoser u'mashka v'shar. Shebezeh mugash lo rak ha'shalil zayini ha'dar v'hachila v'shtia inin b'ti ritzuyin l'yom ha'tiniyas elagam v'simcha v'atarim v'achila v'sar shemen v'stiyas yayin yisham. We know that in Shabbat, it's a mitzvah to eat and to drink and to celebrate and to enjoy not only spiritual pleasures, but physical pleasures, of course. Having a good meal, a lot of Shabbos guests, some nice good wine. And we know that on a fast day, we're not supposed to eat or drink. So what happens is on a fast day falls on Shabbat, not only are we ordinarily enjoying the day of Shabbat in extended joy and happiness through our eating and drinking, but now we have to double it over. We have to eat and drink even more on Shabbat when the fast day falls on Shabbat. Merumezes gam hasauda yasida kodesh baruch hu. That's what tzaddikim nasi lavo. So lo achil v'sar leviatan misharabar mishtei yain v'shamor. And we see that this is a foretaste of the great meal, the great feast that awaits the righteous in the future to come, which is connected to the feast of the Leviathan and the Shurabor and the guarded wine. This is all going to take place in an actual physical feast. Hasidus explains not only is this a spiritual feast connected to the spiritual inner depths of getting rid of the Yetzer Hara, getting rid of the animal soul. These are all connected to the feast of the Leviathan and Shurabor, the great whale and the great bull. We explained in Chassidus, as we just mentioned, it's not only a spiritual feast, but an actual physical feast, we're actually going to be eating this tremendous delicacies. אינו בגן עדן שאין בו לא אכל ושתייה ושתיין אלא בו לא מתחייה. לנשמה זה גוף עם דקה, ועד הנאמר שתייה זינויס מהגוף. Because we know in the days of Mashiach that the ultimate purpose of creation is not that we should turn into souls and go up to heaven and be rid of our bodies. On the contrary, all the greatest tzaddikim who ever lived are going to return to this physical world into their physical body. Because the whole purpose of creation is this physical world. And therefore, we're going to live in the future to come souls in bodies, eating, drinking, celebrating, and enjoying the pleasures of this world along with the spiritual, godly energy that's within it. יש להפקיד, וזה גם במוצאי שבת י"ז תמוז ואולי יש לו יושר ובכל מוצאי שבת. שלך יושר סודת דוד מלך המשיח, וגשש בו ביושר בהשייך לזירות המשיח. כבית עצמס והפך לעשות מספר לעון דין. We also know that on Motzi Shabbat, on Shabbos evening, we're supposed to have the Sudas Melava Malcha, which is the meal of the end of Shabbat, which is bringing us into the following work week. And that's called the Feast of David Melech HaMashiach, of King David. So how much more so we see that is also going to be connected to Mashiach. Okay, David. ויש הקשר עניין זה ליום השבס לתיכיס ושביתו צאן מרואיס ההפיכוסוי לממתוי ביום ששון ושמחה. In Parshas Yeshua, Parshas Balak. We also see this concept connected to this week's Parsha, which is Parshas Balak. העניינים המיוחדים בפרשת בלק, שבו נתהפרש בתורה על רבי יוסי המשיח, פסק דין הרמב"ם, המלך המשיח, התורה עניין אלי, בפרשת בלעם נאמר ושם נבוא בשני המשיחים. We see in this week's Parsha, in Balak, which is connected to the prophecy of Bilam. This is the place in the actual written Torah where it speaks about Mashiach. Where Bilam has a prophecy about two Mashiachs. Mashiach Rishon hu David, shahashi'a es Yisrael miyad tzurehim. The first Mashiach is connected to David HaMelech that saved the Jewish people from all their enemies, and that was immediately. Mashiach HaRon, and the second Mashiach is referring to Sho'emed b'menav shemoshmi'a es Yisrael, the final Mashiach, the final Redeemer, Melech HaMashiach. V'sham hu omer areinu lo ata zeh David. And like the pasuk says, I see him, but not now. This is David. Ashereinu v'lo karov zeh Melech HaMashiach. And he will come, but he's not close. This is referring to the second Mashiach, which is Melech HaMashiach, King Mashiach. Derech Kochem Yaakov zeh David, and it says a star will come forth from Yaakov. This is referring to David. V'kam shivat miYisrael zeh Melech HaMashiach. And will lift up the tribes of the Jewish people. This is referring to Melech HaMashiach. Mechatz pa'asi Moab zeh David, and he will destroy our enemies of Moab. This is connected to David. The Karkar called B'nai says zeh Melech HaMashiach, and the following pasuk referring to here Adaim Yershai David Yershai b'Hal Melech HaMashiach, that Edom will be destroyed, referring to David, and we will take their land as inheritance, referring to Melech HaMashiach. So all these psukim that are coming forth from this week's Parsha are connected to these two levels of Mashiach, the Redeemer of David HaMelech and the final Redeemer of Melech HaMashiach. And we see that the Torah speaks about Mashiach in this week's Parsha. Excuse me. V'shmo Bilam, v'hafuch Hashem Elokecha, no Elokeh Kolal. Bracha, excuse me. It says that Bilam wanted to curse the Jewish people, and he couldn't. He opened his mouth to curse us, and instead Hashem put blessings in his mouth. And he blessed us. And this is hinted also in this whole concept of the exile and the fast days. Just like the exile and the fast days appear to be curses, the fact is they're not, that they're really going to be revealed as blessings in Mashiach times. I already said that. Parshas Pinchas. We also see a connection to the parsha that we read on Mincha of Shabbos, which is Parshas Pinchas. Pinchas Eliyahu. Pinchas is Eliyahu. V'vasar ha'geula. And one of the jobs of Eliyahu Hanavi is to announce the redemption. But Patius Yoiser, more specifically, Manoiga L'Teichana Parsha is connected to the content of the parsha. Ma'inyan B'nei Yisrael. Talking about the counting of the Jewish people. This is the 10th counting of the Jewish people. That in 10 places God counted the Jewish people. And one will take place in the future to come. And then each one of the sheep, the Jewish people are liking to God's sheep, will pass before him for a final counting, a final reckoning. Through the dividing of the land of Israel. The Israel. And the land of Israel will be divided through a goral, through a lottery, if you will. And then the future to come, not only will there be divided amongst the 12 tribes, but there will be 13 divisions, because the tribe of Levi, the Kohanim, will also have a portion in the land in the future to come. The Karbanos, Ha'amoindim, Pesach, Shavuos, V'Suchos, and they will bring offerings like on Pesach, Shavuos, and Suchos, Shebezem Merumzas, Afichas, this is another hint that the days of fasting will why did I just lose my words? Will be transformed to days of joy and rejoicing. Okay. Hey. There is the add-on to this. Once again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the goodness of the 17th of Tammuz, and when it falls on this fast falls on Shabbat. These are, as we say, the beginning of the days of narrowness, these challenging days, these 3 weeks they're called. A lot of restrictions on these 3 weeks. Regarding the Shabbos that fall out in these 3 weeks. And it's known that the 3 weeks during these times, where there's connected to the healing of these 3 weeks, what it stands for. And 1 second. Each one of these Shabbos is fixing up or healing these 3 weeks. Excuse me. V'roi v'shanim shahabeshoizim brak be'emsi gimel shava'ois bein mitzrim mudgash yoiser ha'inin b'tiritzim bein mitzrim ha'charban ha'galus ha'hemshech zeh mudgash etzimar. I'm going to read this through and then explain outside. Tikun v'tikun b'pal aidei shabbatoi shebeihem geula. Masha'en kim b'shneim shavos eser b'tamus. Hal Shabbat. Yesh lo she'ikar hagashi al ha'tayv. The Yadzayin Tammuz bein mitzrim. Mitzad neh hakara ha'dama. Then Rachav v'mitas ha'shalayim the geula mitas ha'shlema shlochen dichalas b'siyim v'bayim ha'shabbat mineh ha'geula. Sivan achar katzah shabbatoi sheba'emsi gimel shabbatoi mudgash be'ikar shleos eino b'ritzim bein mitzrim. Tikun ha'charban v'galus. V'elu shabbatoi sheb'tchilas v'siyoyim gimel shabbois. Mudgash be'ikar einin ha'tayv bein mitzrim elot nigash harban v'gala al hakana v'gula. Okay, so we see that not only is the 3 weeks the beginning and the preparing, Yud Zayin Tammuz of these 3 weeks, but since it falls out on Shabbat, as we already said, and Shabbat pushes off the fast day, then we see that the goodness of Shabbat is not only pushing off this fast day, but it's going to bless all the 3 weeks to be not days of narrowness and challenging times, but to be good times. As instead of focusing on the negativity of the exile, we're focusing on the positivity of the redemption. Vav, v'yesh l'mor shema aydes the yom Shabbat shechol bo shiva esra v'tammuz l'gabe shabbatois bein mitzrim shla'achazeh midgash gam of Parshas Balak. This is also connected again to this week's Parsha Balak. V'adama sheparshiyoi shekorim b'gimel hashabbatois the bein hamitzrim. Hey, matais v'maseh v'davarim. And it's talking about the following parshas that are coming. Matos v'maseh v'davarim b'shneim shematos maseh mechovrin. Korin gam pinchas sheben hamitzrim. That when matos and masai are combined, we also see that we read pinchas during this time. But I was talking about the parshas that are read during these 3 weeks and their connection to the 3 weeks. This is not the case when Parshas Balak is not included in the 3 weeks. But Parshas Balak Shabbat the Yom Parshas Pinchas. Since Balak pushes off the fast of 17th of Tammuz, it changes the sequence of the parshas that are read. So let's explain what that means and why it's relevant. We can see the difference between the redemption connected to Parshas Pinchas, and the way that's connected to the redemption of Parshas Balak. That the redemption of Parshas Pinchas is connected and relevant to the 3 weeks. Because it's emphasizing the main concept of fixing up or rectifying the exile. This is not the case with the redemption of Parshas Balak. So we see that Parshas Pinchas is connected, the content of the parsha, to the rectification of the exile, where Parshas Balak is connected to not the rectification of the exile, but the revealed good of the redemption. And we're going to explain. The Indians and Mudgash Gambo, Eifrin Torah, Heida, all there to Mashiach with Parshas Balak. Kasharamba, Muvor, HaTorah, Heida, Ilah. Makdim, Tchila, Shne'amar, Vishav, Hashem Lokacha Ashava Secha, Varhamech Ashava Kavetzecha. And it brings down that it says that Hashem, your God, will return you. He will gather you up and return you. Talking about what's going to happen right before Moshiach comes. How God is going to redeem all of his children and awaken them and return them back to the full belief and following of the true God. V'katza hashemayim, even if they're in the furthest corners of the world. V'yecha Hashem, v'achar hach mosif after Parshas Bilam, na'amar b'shem na'amar b'shnei HaMashiach. And then after this, we learn about in Parshas Bilam, as we said earlier, about the two Mashiachs we spoke about. And what is the difference between them both? The fact when it says God will gather us from the furthest corner of the world, this is referring and emphasizing that he's redeeming us from the exile. Whereas in Parshas Bilam or Balak, the emphasis is not on redeeming us from the exile. In other words, not on taking us out of the exile and bringing us to the redemption, but the redemption in and of itself. It's a higher level. Malchus David, talking about the kingship of David, which is the first Mashiach. And the completion of the redemption, which will take place with the final Mashiach. So Aymed Uvenav, Shahari Benavuas Bilam, Doniskara al Derek Ma'amora Metzav Shogalos. And the Rab Ma'amora Metzav Shokiris Va'ar Hashloton al Kahayimi. Talking about the prophecy of Bilam, referring to the concept that we will be free from the nations. What does it say? That this is a nation that is alone, that doesn't reckon with other nations. It says the Yidden are like oil. And unfortunately, the oil comes from the olive, and they got to be squeezed sometimes for the oil to come in. But the thing about oil that's unique is you can mix it together with any other liquid, and it will never mix. Anything. You mix oil with any type of liquid, and what happens? The oil rises to the top. It doesn't mix. And this is what Bilam is saying. This is a nation that is alone, that is separated, so to speak, from the others. Haimim kalavi yakoyim ka'ari nasa lo ishachav ayecho teraf. And it says that this is like the lion that rises up higher from the other animals, and will not lay down. Where you run again, malacha b'tenasa melchusa va'ad arenu. It's talking about the prophecy of Bilam again. That I see Mashiach, but he's not close, and and a star will come forth from Yaakov. And again, this is referring to the two Mashiachs. The first one, David, and the second one, Melech HaMashiach. And according to this, just to explain the reason this is emphasized, just like when God took us out of Egypt. And like the pasuk says, just like when I took you out of Egypt, I will once again show you wonders. It's God's promise to us when Mashiach comes. He lo rak b'glah ha'chrach l'hotzias b'nei Yisrael makal ha'galus. And this is emphasized the true and complete redemption through Mashiach himself. That not only is it referring to the fact that he will take us out from the exile, but that he will bring us to a place of redemption, that it will be wondrous, a complete, miraculous, wondrous way. Referring to the journeys that the Jewish people took when we went out of Egypt. Wasn't referring just to the fact that God took us out of the exile in Egypt and under the slavery from Ramses, from the evil Paroi. But it's referring also to all the future redemptions, that after Egypt we continue to be subjugated by the nations of the world. And God's promise to us is that he will always redeem us, like he always has. Every nation that has ever tried to imprison or destroy the Jewish people is gone, and the Jewish people are still here. And this is going to be the ultimate will take place in the true and complete redemption. Well, there'll be no more exile. That God will remove us from our final exile, and that will be it. There'll be no more imprisoning of the Jewish people, Baruch Hashem. Okay. Zion. B'kanal. Lo yisef lo yemiuchad. All this applies very specifically to our times. Well, we're going to be done early tonight. It's a short tzila, Baruch Hashem. B'hagdama, the preface. Sheka'asher shenizbarer la'ayel sheb'shnehem shebehem hal yud zayin tammuz b'yom Shabbat v'udgash be'igar ha'toyev sheb'yud zayin tammuz v'begimel shvois shelo nirgash ha'chad v'nhagol zela ha'karna l'gula mitzah ha'gashes. In the Shabbat, the Rebbe is referring once again, talking about how when the 17th of Tammuz falls out on Shabbos, that the true goodness of the day is revealed because the fast day is pushed off, as we said, and instead of on Shabbos, it's on the day after. The that we're now shifting our focus away from the negativity of the exile and the outer part of the fast into the inner dimension of the fast, which is good, and the redemption. The Gemara says, Sason v'simcha, b'zman sheyesh shalom, shehela sason v'simcha. Yesh gezeras hamalchus, soim ein gezeras hamalchus, ve'en shalom ratzay, v'thanin ratzay, ein v'thanin. Haynu shekasher nichalesh teikef ha'galus. Ein gezeras hamalchus, nachashet teikef ha'tzayim, v'hakarabim, yoyser l'zman sheyat sason v'simcha. Ve'en in zem ugash v'miuchad, v'chidesh v'lerenu zem. Meshach HaDrosh Lefanazeh Lefnei Zeh Haya Chodesh Tammuz Kasher Im Haniliyah Tehefach HaSimcha Korban HaGalus Ve'elo B'Dorenu Zeh Yizgal B'Chodesh Tammuz Inim Zeh Shal Geula Geula Kovet Kodesh U'Malachad Ve'ana Nasa D'Reinu V'Yud Be'Shav Gimel Tammuz. So the Rebbe says like this: in previous generations, the month of Tammuz was not a good month because it began the 3 weeks, which lead us up to the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. But it's changed in our generation because now the month of Tammuz is connected to redemption. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe's predecessor, his father-in-law, was redeemed from prison on the 12th and 13th of Tammuz, which is actually right now. We are now in the 12th of Tammuz, tomorrow, and also the day after. Hasidim around the world are celebrating in tremendous joy because the previous Rebbe was in prison for spreading Judaism in communist Russia, and he was freed on these days. So it's a day of great joy and simcha. Because of and the Frierdiker Rebbe said when he went out of prison that Hashem in his mercy did not just redeem me, but he redeemed all of those who love the Torah, who keep its mitzvahs, and all that are called in the name of Yisrael, the Jewish people. Because of Nasi Huakal, the leaders connected to the whole generation. And so we were redeemed together with the previous Rebbe. I already said that. Geula, the Kol Bnei Yisrael HaKashurim, Gam Ein HaGeula B'Tizr Shem. Oidem Shirtzikenu. Kivan Shem Geula La'er. בפרט שעל ידי זה תחילה השלמה שאיננה יפוצו מן החוצו צח חוצה גם בחצי כדור התחתון באופן שממנו מתפשטים המעניוס בכל קבציתם And not only is the redemption of the Frierdiker Rebbe from the 12th and 13th of Tammuz, the Rebbe says even more. It's connected to the true and complete redemption. This is really the beginning of taking the redemption to a whole nother level. And we see that by the fact that after the Frierdiker Rebbe was redeemed, he began the process of spreading out the teachings of Chassidus, as the promise of the Baal Shem Tov. When your teachings are spread out, Moshiach told them, I will come. And that began the process of really spreading out the teaching of Chassidus to the furthest corners of the world. And explaining it deeper. As the Rebbe has told us many times, especially recently, we're the last generation of the exile and the first generation of the redemption. And therefore we see that the emphasis in our generation is less on the outer part of the fast, which is commensurated with sadness and destruction, and more on the inner part of the fast, which is connected to redemption and goodness. The good part of it. And this is all preparations for the true and complete redemption. Because and the Frierdiker Rebbe said immediate tshuva brings forth immediate redemption. And he also said that all the work is finished. All that's left is to polish up the buttons, meaning the very final touches before Mashiach comes. Even more than this, the Rebbe said, not only that, we've already completed this. In other words, the final stage, the previous Rebbe said, before Mashiach comes, is we have to just polish up the buttons. It's like a soldier puts on his uniform, he's all decked out, everything ready to go. And the final thing he does is a little polishing of the buttons. The Rebbe said, we already finished polishing the buttons. And all that's necessary is that we stand together. The Kabbalah to accept the inward face and the inward dimension of Mashiach, a righteous Redeemer. Hurry, shall take flight. And we're already in this final period. Vadai lo kol safek v'safek saficha b'shakar hagir b'zman lagos. And the Rebbe said, for sure, and for sure, without any doubt whatsoever, we already reached the time of the redemption. So the Rebbe says, as a prophet, we're there. All the ends have been reached. And we've already done tshuva, the Rebbe said. And it's already complete, the Rebbe says. And so even Mashiach will cause the righteous to do tshuva. From the side of the spark of Mashiach, of redemption that is in every single Jew. And the Rebbe says, for sure, he already said that we're already standing at redemption. Now he said, we're very, very close to the true and complete redemption. I mean, it's almost completed. Everything is at the very, very end. And the Rebbe said this 30 years ago. It's mind-boggling to understand how we're still in the exile. So I said, and the Rebbe says this is emphasized even more when the 17th of Tammuz falls on Shabbat. And this reveals the innermost aspect which is connected to the true and complete redemption. Ches. And this also applies even more so in this year, in the year that it was given, 1991. 30 years ago. And the Rebbe said, again, we're adding on, that we find ourselves very, very close to the true and complete redemption. And we see in this year, Tafshin Nun Aleph, the year that it will show you wonders. Niflot Arenu. Bashana Shabo Yikiyoim Hayu. And I will show you wonders, like when I took you out of Egypt. We could already see these wonders in actuality. And the Rebbe said, and this is the year, in 1991, that Melech HaMashiach will reveal himself. And that's exactly what happened. That's the year that the Rebbe started openly accepting the fact that he was Mashiach, when they were singing Yechi Adonenu every single davening in front of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe was encouraging him to do so. And that for sure, Melech HaMashiach is coming. And he will announce to the Jewish people the time of your redemption has arrived, which the Rebbe also did that year. And he will not make the announcement that Melech HaMashiach is coming. Shekar Varbo, and he already came, the Rebbe said, in the past tense. In other words, he's already here. He's already revealed himself. And we find ourselves standing at the threshold, at the very end, and the beginning of the end of the Golus and the beginning of the days of Mashiach. And literally the threshold of the redemption. And immediately it will be completed. Not only the threshold, but completed. And how much more so for sure on the 17th of Tammuz, and all 3 weeks that are coming up, that are emphasized to the true and complete redemption. Not just preparation for redemption. But that the redemption happened right now, mamish. In this Shabbos, Lifnei Techilas, the Mitzrayim b'Meil, Yehafchu Yemei Me'edim, Sasam the simple, the Oimdim Titan, and immediately, automatically, the exile will be transformed to days of goodness and joy, the Rebbe says. Tess. Mezeh Muvan Shabiyamei Bein HaMitzrayim Deshana Zu Tzrik Lihois Shturim. The Rebbe said, in that year you had to make a shturim, a lot of noise, a big deal. And specifically, that we have to increase in our connection to learning matters of the redemption and Mashiach and the Beis Hamikdash, which is what we do every week, Monday from 8 to 10, exactly as the Rebbe instructs us to do. Yedua Mufarsam Bechafutzos Yisrael Makaber Bakama Bakamashnim Al Derek Amen Heg should be a May Bein HaMitzri. Mosafim Belemra Torah Beinei Beis HaBechira. We know that during these 3 weeks we're supposed to learn about the Beis HaMikdash, the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Ad Yisai the Beri HaMidrash. Bo Verash HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moral Yecheskel Vot Suras Abayit Ma Hu Omer. A guide as Beit Yisrael as a Bible, Chadama, Sehem, Umadedoy as a Knis, Amar Yecheskel, Lifnei Hashem Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbeinu Shalom. Arakshav, Anu Notnim, the Gola, Be'eretz Sha'anoi Vata Omer Li Lech, V'Hidir Yisrael Tzarech HaBayit, V'Chir Chol Din Hein Lasois, and Nirch Lehem, Ad Sha'alo Mina Gola. Goyda, but Achachani Halech Halimer Lehem, Aleh Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. That Yecheskel. Bishvil Bishnei Notnim Begolos Yehav Inir Beit Batal Gadol Karias BeTorah BeBinei Lecha Imer Lehem Yitasku the Karois Torah Sabayis BeTorah Ubaskar Karias Sheizko the Christ Ani Ma'ala Elehem Kilu Hein Paiskim Bemin Abayit. Wow. The after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Hashem instructed the prophet Yecheskel to teach the Jewish people about what the dimensions of the third of Beis Hamikdash is going to be like. And he turned to Hashem and said, hold on a second. You just destroyed the second temple. You want to give him a little chance to mourn, and now you already you talk to him about about building the third temple, you just destroyed the second temple. Hashem said, just because my children are in exile, it means we shouldn't begin the process of rebuilding the third temple. And by teaching them and by learning about the building of the third temple, I will consider it as if you're actually building the temple. That's why it's so important during these 3 weeks that we read in the prophet Yechezkel in the back chapters. I think it's the final 7 chapters. Maybe it's going to bring in here. I don't remember the top of my head. That are specifically connected to the dimensions of the third temple. And it's very important to learn that during these 3 weeks, which start on Sunday, because this is the promise of Hashem. When you learn about the rebuilding of the temple, it's as if you're actually rebuilding the temple, the third base of Mikdash. כיוון שאין דין על סף הגאולה שבו תכף הבמש. כיוון שהלימוד הלכה זה בית הבחירה בשנה זו צריך להיות באופן אחד לגמרי, אחר לגמרי. The Rebbe says, and how much more so, now that the 7th of the Tammuz falls out on Shabbos, that we have to learn about the halachas of rebuilding the temple in a completely different way. First of all, שהלימוד הוא לא מצד הסגברוס רגש וחילה Behilas, Vahishtalus, the Tepan Hasroin, the Korban of Beis Hamikdash. Elimitzad HaKaisev, Yishtok HaKais, the others, Vahashlemas of Beis Hamikdash Lish. Alain Ha'mar, Gadol Yah, Kavoy, Habayat Hazet, Achroim, Harishai, Gadol Ishlo Hayama, Elam. Bemila Loya, Vachim Harban, Ba'ifin Shah Hispa, Vahashlemas on Ma'alah HaMishkan, Beit Rishoi, Beit Sheni. The Rebbe says we should not be learning about the Beis Hamikdash in the past, about its destruction and what's going to come in the future, but rather we need to be learning about the third temple, like mamish, like right now, with the understanding that we're bringing about the true and complete redemption right now. In other words, we have to shift our consciousness from this concept that Mashiach is going to come, Bim Harabi Yameinu, speedily in our days, to Mashiach is here, and we're not hoping for something in the future, but we're living with this concept now. And furthermore, and mainly, and again, the Rebbe says, we're not supposed to be learning about Mashiach like this is something to come in the distant future, but rather in actuality, right now, we have to live in the state of awareness. In other words, the future temple to come is not going to be built with our hands. It's going to descend from heaven. Right now, the Rebbe says, at this moment, the final temple is literally built already in Shemayim. It says all our job is to put on the doors, to put the final fixing attachment to it. But all the exam and we see, as is emphasized, and we spoke about many times recently, how we must increase in our learning of Torah as it's specifically connected to redemption and Mashiach, which is again what we're doing here. And this is not, we shouldn't be learning about Mashiach and Geula not only as a way to bring close the days of Mashiach and redemption. Ella, the Iker, mainly, in order now that we should live with the manners of Mashiach and redemption. To live with them now. Mashiach, right now. This is the whole thing. The Rebbe says Mashiach now. You have to live with this now. And you can't live with this now unless you're learning about it on a regular basis. In such a way that our brain is filled with and penetrated with and comprehends all the matters of Mashiach and redemption that are in the Torah. In such a way that not only is our brain filled with this concept, but our hearts we feel it in our hearts. I can feel it. It's alive. The Mashiach has to be felt alive and passionate inside our hearts. In such a way that it translates into our thought, our speech, and our deeds right now. Because we're standing on the threshold of redemption. And literally, Mashiach is coming right now, the Rebbe says. Everyone else talks about Mashiach as if some distant dream. The Rebbe brings us into an actual reality right now. In addition, we have to explain the necessity and the advantage of learning the Torah of matters of Mashiach and redemption, and the third base of Mikdash. And this is the beginning of the days of the Mashiach, and proceeding and preparing for such a thing. And our rabbis teach us Mashiach will come without any das. In other words, like this, in a blink of an eye. We won't have to it's going to happen in 1 second, whether you're ready or not. So the point of the Rebbe says you better get ready now, because it's dark, and just like you put on a light switch, that's what's going to happen. God's just going to go blink, and all of a sudden, boom, the redemption's going to be here. And the Rebbe says it's not a contradiction, has v'shalom, that we should learn about Mashiach and redemption in such a way that we have true knowledge of it. We should do everything we can to have knowledge of Mashiach and redemption. But Mashiach's going to come in 1 second, regardless of that or not. Mashiach Ugula, matters of Mashiach and redemption. So what does it mean? Without that, without knowledge. It means it'll be above that, it'll be above knowledge. It'll be in such a way that it'll be in a miraculous way. Namely, that it will penetrate into our knowledge. He said, "Nasa the matter and the Rebbe says in such a way that we must make a lot of noise about this concept. We have to publicize it. Since we're in this final period in this year, the year I will show you wonders. And this is the year that Melech HaMashiach reveals himself, the Rebbe says, 30 years ago. And the Rebbe says that literally we are preparing, and it's penetrating, and it's emphasizing how we are standing on the threshold of redemption. Truly. And we've already began this process of literally living with Mashiach and redemption. And what does this mean? What does it mean? I will show you wonders. It means two things. I will show you. That Hashem himself will show us. He himself is going to show us the wonders. And not through a prophet or through a human being. God himself will show us these wonders. And base, in such a way that we will see. We will see literally with our eyes that Hashem is literally revealing wonders to us. This is not the case of the order when we say wonders I will show you. In such a way that there will be wonders, and afterwards we have to strain ourselves to see them. And the Rebbe says, and how do we see these wonders? We must learn about matters of Mashiach and redemption, because then you will start seeing the godly revealed godliness in what appears to be a world of the opposites. Let's put that nicely. Yishnar teva hadam, and it will literally change. The nature will literally change for you. The Rebbe says. Shagam kashir metzar hagesh elu nimtza adayin chas v'shalom mechutz le'ein haguf. And furthermore, for those that still feel that they are outside of this concept of redemption. The Rebbe says through learning about Torah and redemption, it will elevate them to a place of redemption. And it will begin the process of living with redemption. And literally we will see and it be emphasized this reality that's happening. In other words, you can't experience godliness without learning Torah, because the Torah reveals to God for you. And you can't experience redemption without learning Moshiach and Gula. You speak to people who are learning these teachings of the Rebbe every week, and they're living in a whole different state of consciousness from those that are not. That's what the Rebbe is telling us. Yudov. V'yesh l'kasher zeh heim halevara perki apos shebashabazu perki shishi sheba hakam kayamim alashon hamish v'derek shebachar behem mishnasam Rabbi Meir Omer kol isik b'torah lishma zerka l'devar harbeh l'chorat tzrik laham. Okay. One second. The sikh is almost done, but I'm going to skip these letters, even though we're almost at the end, because it goes off on a little bit of a separate tangent, and excuse me, but like my eyes are literally falling out of my head right now. Let me see where we can catch up here. Okay, I'm moving over to Yud Gimel, the last letter. I just skipped over Yud Aleph and Yud Beis. Again, it's a short sikha. We're almost at the end, but I was catching tonight, so exhausted I am. All right, Yud Gimel. We're at the main finishing line. Hirat Son, maybe Hashem's will. Who Iker mainly? Shalom Yitzaycha Ledavar the Orver Alder. It will not be necessary to arouse in our thought and our comprehension of these matters of Mashiach and redemption. And learning about matters of the Torah and Mashiach, learning matters in the Torah about Mashiach and redemption and the third temple. Because the Rebbe said it's not going to be necessary to learn these things anymore, because we will see with our physical eyes. Literally, Mashiach is coming right now. Here's the true and complete redemption, and here's the third temple. In a simple way. Literally, right now in Shabbos Parshas Balak, in the 17th of Tammuz, Shenat Areno Niflois, in the year I will show you wonders. With Kayamis and Nevuah, with Parshas Hashivuah Shekabra Karei, but now Malchusa, Shalemas Malchus Ben David, Ba'ad Exed Derechel Yaakov, will have the completion of the house of David, referring to a star will come forth from Yaakov. And this is when and the tribes of the Jewish people will be lifted up. Mashiach Acharein, and we'll have the last redemption. Shugula Es Yisrael, the last Redeemer, Mashiach himself, will redeem all the Jewish people. And will be the final redemption with no more exile afterwards. The Hemshek Lezer Boim called Pratininim Parshas Pinchas. And this will continue on. We see in a continuation of this concept in Parshas Pinchas. Pinchas is Eliyahu, and Pinchas who is Eliyahu. And what is the job of Eliyahu? Shekavar Ata Eliyahu. Mitchmol the Beit Din Agal. Inyan Esrei the Kavan Israel, Luchas Haaretz, and announce the redemption and gather the Jewish people from the furthest corners of the world. By Karavaz HaKarbanos, and we will return to bringing our offerings to God. Haim Karbanos L'chol Yom, every day we'll be bringing the offerings of the Beis Hamikdash. Haim Karbanos to Shabbos, and the offerings of Shabbat. Haim Karbanos de Mei Oindim, and the ordinary days. Of Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, and this will all take place in the third temple. Mikdash Adonai Konei Yadecha, the temple that God Himself will establish with His hands. And we will be learning the new Torah that will come out from Hashem. In such a way that we will see with our physical eyes. And our teacher, we will see with our physical eyes, our teacher. And God will return us to Tzion. This will all take place in a revealed way immediately, mamash. And may we immediately have the fullest godliness of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, and we shall continue this for bringing in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, God bless you, Moshiach now.